Okay, we're ready to finish the first layer of paint. I'm going to fill in the mountains, and I might add a little bit of texture to the clouds. You might notice that I have added something. I've put some pink craft tape around the outside of my painting because I noticed that it was starting to buckle and ripple a little bit. This is just some inexpensive art tape that I got at a craft store. I like to use it for my watercolor because it's not super sticky, so when I tear it off, it's not going to rip the paper. And hopefully it'll just help my paper stay a little bit more flat. It isn't necessary, but if you have some tape laying around, you want to try that. I just taped it to a piece of printer paper to try to help it stay a little bit flat. Okay, so for the mountains, I'm going to use some browns, a little bit of yellow, and some blue and dark blue, so I need some black for that. So the first thing, of course, is to make sure all those colors are wet, moist. So I'm putting a few drops of water on blue, yellow, brown, black. And I think that's all I'm gonna do for now. All right, I am gonna put some of those colors in the lid for my mixing palette. So a decent amount of yellow. Of course, wash my brush. Some brown. Wash my brush. And some blue. By the way, I did get some clean water while I was waiting for the other sections to dry. I'm not going to use a lot of purple, but I might need a little purple, so just make sure that I have that. And last but not least, again, I'm not going to use a lot of black, but I want to make sure I have it ready. So I'm going to put some black, more black. Washing my brush. Definitely need to get some clean water, but I don't want to stop the video, so I'm going to take my chances. So I'm going to do a wet and wet wash. I'm going to start with the two mountains that are near the outside. Now I know that my water has a gray tint to it because I did not want to pause the video to go get clean water, but it's not terrible and it's going to have color, so I think I can get away with it. Normally I would really advise you to get some clean water. Okay, so I'm just doing a wet wash, a clean water wash, and I'm going to start with some blue, and I'm stippling, which means I'm going to fill this in with some dots. These colors are going to bleed and go wherever they want to go. And that's kind of a thing about watercolor. It's also kind of a thing about this technique of stippling. So I want the colors to just kind of have their own mind right now. Okay, washing my brush out, and I'm going to get some brown. Again, I'm working kind of fast because I don't want the paper to dry out before I have a chance to get color in there. Being careful right next to my grasses. Wash the brush. Now I don't want yellow, so it's a little too bright for the mountain area. So I'm going to take a little dot of brown, mix it with the yellow, just to soften the hue of the yellow, just a little. And again, just going to stipple that in there. And you might find that you get a little bit of a greenish tint where that yellow-brown color overlaps the blue. Because, as we talked about in our class, yellow and blue makes green. me put a little bit more brown in there to warm up the yellow. And now I'm just kind of stippling in all the white spaces. I'm also trying to go along the top of the mountain just a little bit so that it's not just solid blue up there. So I've waited almost too long, and this right hand side of my mountains are almost dry already. Okay, you can see how this looks like, the way that I've stippled it in there, it looks like just bunches of trees and bushes along the mountain range. Okay, and I'm going to go to the one on the far side. I'm not going to do this one yet because I'm going to maybe just give a little bit of time for the mountains to dry on either side so they don't all bleed together. Okay, I noticed that I need a little more yellow. So before I start painting, I'm just going to refill the yellow. Again, I'm going to take some brown, mix it in with the yellow. Give it more of a tan color. Okay, so I've already wet that section. I'm going to start the same way with a little bit of blue. I'm going to put some blue in different places this time. And then I'm going to go in with some purple. So I want these mountains to be a little different from the ones that I did on the other side. Okay, let me get some of that warm yellow-brown color. And again, I'm just stippling the colors in so that it looks rough and bushy is the goal. Okay, I like it. Okay, it's gonna be a little tricky to do the mountain in the middle, but here's what I want you to do. Wet your paper to the top of the mountain, and when you get close to the mountains on either side, try to leave the tiniest little bit of a barrier of dry paper. So I'm just leaving a little bit of the paper dry. I'm not wetting it because I'm going to try to keep it from bleeding from the mountains to bleed into each other. If they do a little bit, see, that happened. It's okay because when we do our second layer, we're going to be able to add some details and kind of clean that up a little bit. So that happens. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I think I'll start with brown. Wash the brush. Gonna get some blue. Oops, I think a little more blue on this side. Okay. Get some of that yellow-brown color in there. So I'm putting it pretty close to the other mountain, but not overlapping too much because I don't want them to completely bleed into each other. I want to try to leave a little bit of a barrier between them. So you're just going to continue until you're with the stippling technique until you have most of the white spaces. Honestly, if you don't have all of the white spaces, it's okay. Because we are going to do several more layers before this painting is finished. You'll have a chance to go in and make some details and fill in some of those white spaces. Okay, so I like it. You can see the stippling pointillism effect in the mountains creates a bushy, brushy sort of effect. And when we add some more details, it's going to look even better. we have to let this completely dry before we go back and add any more details. The last little thing I'm gonna do, and this you can do, you don't have to do, but I know that these clouds are way too white. Clouds shouldn't be quite so white. So I'm gonna take a really watered down version, oops, of some blue. So I'm just putting a dot of blue and a lot of water, super watered down version. And I'm just gonna add, yeah, that's a good amount. Just gonna add a few little areas of blue to those clouds. Very light amount though, mostly along the bottom. What I'm doing here is just kind of reinforcing the shape of the cloud and adding some textures to it so that it doesn't just look like a cotton ball, but a little bit more like a real cloud. Okay, and I'm gonna let that dry completely before I go and try to do a second layer of details and colors.